What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of New Gameplay Today. Thank you for tuning into Game Informer. I'm one of your hosts here, Alex Van Aken, joined by Charles Hart. How you doing, Charles?
Hello. I'm good and so excited to look at gameplay for this game.
Yeah. So we are taking a look at Spider-Man 2. Just a heads up, we have to commentate over it and we have to cut it up. I'd love to give it to you uncut and all that, but I know the comments will probably come. We can't. We aren't allowed. So just a heads up at the start of this video. But I want to introduce Marcus Stewart, who has played Marvel's Spider-Man 2. He's played everything we're going to be taking a look at today. This B-roll was provided by PlayStation, but Marcus played and saw all of these sections in action. Hey, Marcus, how are you?
I'm feeling good, and like Charles, I'm super excited because I like me some Spider-Man.
Yeah, Spider-Man, he's all right. I'm not afraid to say it.
Yeah, hot take, Spider-Man's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we saw Kraven there attacking Spidey, and now we're making a black hole, maybe? What's going on here, Marcus?
Yeah, like we said, these are going to be some sort of out-of-context clips, but this section was actually Spider-Man working with Harry Osborn to sort of shut down a particle accelerator that's kind of lost control. It's kind of one of the plot points of the game is Harry and Peter working together at the sort of think tank that Harry runs to sort of try to better humanity, which we saw a little bit of that in the first game when you're doing those sort of like environmental missions.
Yeah,
it's sort of like the expanded version of that. He's like, hey, I just want to help people, and so they're working together. And also what's cool is that Harry knows that Peter's Spider-Man.
Yeah,
so
that's
pretty cool.
I feel like there's a lot that has happened in between these games, and I'm very excited to see, like, obviously we know that symbiote powers are a thing. That was something I'm surprised they showed off so early. But I think they're getting a lot of the big reveals out of the way, and hopefully that means that we're going to have a really interesting story between Peter and Harry, and then of course, Kraven and so on and so forth. I'm excited.
Yeah. So this was the first combat section that I got to play. Okay. The demo itself took place a few hours into the game. I didn't start from the beginning. I don't know how many exactly, but that was kind of the idea. So it sounds like you're going to get the symbiote suit, I'd say, relatively early on, is my assumption. But yeah, the combat here, as you can see, similar to the first game. It's a lot of jumping around, dodging, all that good stuff. It feels good, and I will say it feels maybe a little less, I don't want to say janky, but a little less, I don't know if chaotic's the word I want to use either, but, like the first game, it felt like you were zipping around in a way that almost somewhere broke the game at times.
Sure.
It felt like there was a little less.
You were like always on the cusp of not being in control a little bit.
This definitely feels controlled. I was going to use that word.
There's still like a lot of like really cool animations, like especially like the big finishing moves and whatever, where you're going to be watching Spider-Man do a cool move, but it feels just a little tighter this time. And the symbiote powers, which are that to the left side of the screen, you have that separate kind of like hotkey bar. Looks
like it's tied to L1. You can also expand it, maybe. Is that right?
Yeah, and that bar also holds your iron spider legs, which has its own sort of like set of moves and skills, and you can actually mix and match, so you can have symbiote skills and iron spider legs at the same time if you want.
That's cool.
But yeah, the symbiote skills feel really good. They feel appropriately powerful, and because of that, they operate on a cooldown, so that you're not spamming them constantly. You're also, every attack you do builds up this sort of like meter that you can see on the upper right hand. Is that yellow meter that builds up.
Yeah,
and we'll see it in a bit, but once that's full, you can activate sort of this this powered up state. I believe it's called Symbiote Surge, where you pretty much just become like unbeatable. Or maybe not unbeatable, but you just become like super powerful for a period where you can just like unleash hell on people. And yeah, this is the point where I switch to Miles here. As I mentioned in the state of play, you can switch between both characters outside of story missions anytime you want. You just kind of hit a button, and then it's sort of like GTA 5 style, swings over to wherever the other spider is currently hanging out, and then you take control, which is cool. And what's nice is, and what's also nice is that progression is shared between both of them, because Miles and Peter have their own skill trees, but they also have one shared skill tree of kind of like more general abilities that apply to both of them. And since you'll earn experience for both, if you prefer to be, maybe you're like, oh, I just want to be Miles all the time when I don't have to be Peter, you can do that. And then in the mandatory situations where you have to be Peter, he's still going to be appropriately leveled and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Oh, cool. Okay.
So to kind of account for like both kind of players, like if you like to switch between them often, or if you just want to be one all the time, you'll be set either way. And yeah, we're seeing the wing gliding here. This is like I don't know if it's the first mission that's built around it, but it's the first one I played. Just sort of like a first test of how to use it well. And wing gliding, I will say, feels super good. It is so much fun to glide around, and it's even more fun when you combine it with the web swinging. Even there's like wind tunnels throughout the city that sort of maintain your momentum, which is what
I
this
was
drone
curious
is
if
doing.
this wind tunnel was a result of like this race or something.
Yeah,
or...
it's like a story mission where you're trying to collect data from the drone, and you got to stay in its slipstream to kind of like maintain the data transfer.
But those slipstreams, or those wind funnels, are they? You said they're sprinkled throughout the city just randomly, or are they also tied to, some sort of speed trial or whatnot?
I believe both. Like I believe there's missions for the wingsuit, but yeah, when you're swinging around, you'll see like little wind tunnels every now and then around the city that you can sort of like jump into to make yourself go faster. But even without them, one of the things that surprised me was how long you can glide for. Like I was flying over like city blocks for a while before I hit the landing. And granted, there is some skill involved because it kind of has like standard flight controls of like, oh, if you dip down and come back up, you'll get like a boost. So you kind of have to take the risk of like hitting the ground, but if you time it right and fly up, you're like, okay, I got a nice momentum boost from that, and maybe I'll keep gliding or I'll swing now.
How does it compare to like the Arkham gliding?
It's a similar, like in terms of gameplay, it's sort of a similar like physics, I guess, but it's much faster. And I think because Batman can kind of swing in those games. Well, he doesn't even really swing with his grapple hook, he just sort of zips around. Whereas since Spider-Man can swing, you have that extra momentum. And so once you jump off of a swing and start wingsuiting, you'll be like zooming across the city. And that momentum, again, fades over time, but getting it back isn't really hard. And that's kind of one of the big takeaways, is that maintaining momentum and the flow of movement in this game feels at its best compared to the first two games because of wing gliding. Like there were less instances of those times where I accidentally hit the ground, and then you feel like a loser because you're like, oh, I just lost all my momentum, and now all the people are looking at you like, oh, you're supposed to be Spider-Man. That didn't happen.
Sorry to interrupt. Are there any moves that you can unlock? I mean, like in the first two Spider-Man games, like you could add on like, oh, I'm doing like in the middle of the air, I can do this barrel roll, and it's going to give me a benefit to my swinging. Is there similar things to
I think so.
Gliding? I'm stumbling on my words.
When I glanced at one of, I believe it was the shared skill tree, it looked like there were a couple web moves, but I believe it's like Miles Morales, because the Miles Morales game, you had a lot of those moves already unlocked that you earned from the first game, and I believe that's still the case here. And at least from what I could tell, from what I glanced in the skill tree, there are only a couple of like new web moves that I had to unlock, but you pretty much got what you have from Miles Morales as far as I could tell.
I guess my question, sorry, because I was stumbling on my words, is there that sort of system, but for the gliding? Are there new gliding moves that maybe we can unlock, or is it more so just a thing that you can chain your movement together?
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know if there's wingsuit moves. From what I was keeping it pretty basic. It was kind of just mastering the basic traversal abilities of the wingsuit. Like I said, with like the diving and then coming back up and trying to figure out how to bank around corners in a way without slamming into the side of the building, which
also
is,
the nature of these
easy,
previews, the nature of these in-person previews, it's like you get a small snippet of something to play around with typically. Like you're not going to see you're not going to see everything on display typically. So maybe that'll happen. That'd be cool. Just because that was one of my favorite things of the previous games was how far can I push this? But just looking at the gliding, it looks awesome. Importantly, how does it compare to Spyro the Dragon, Marcus? Probably the biggest point of comparison.
Yeah, I mean, technically, another Insomniac game. Spyro glided so that Spider-Man could continue to glide, but better. I don't know. But Yeah, that's what I was thinking this whole time. Was like, man, this is just like Spyro the Dragon. But yeah, it's. I mean, I get my biggest takeaway is like, hey, did you like that Spider-Man game? Because it's that, but it's still a lot of fun. You know, maybe the most fun. As you can see, there's still the random crime stuff. I don't know how varied they are this time. I know that was one of the biggest criticisms with probably the first game more so, just because it was a bigger world.
Yeah.
But the missions I found were pretty fun. There were some returning ones like the photo op stuff.
Okay.
Which I still enjoy for like
I enjoy
not only
those
the
too.
sight, yeah, not even just for the sightseeing aspect, but for the like weird, goofy stuff you can come across. Like, let's just say I might have come across a certain shirtless Spider-Man on a rooftop somewhere,
Oh, okay.
and as well as the shirtless Miles Morales, who's like his buddy, doing up to some fun shenanigans.
Yeah, maybe I might have used to run a website with the shirtless Miles Morales in the game.
So it's not, but it's not all just landmarks, the photo ops.
No, it's definitely not. Like some of them are just like, hey, there's some people doing some cool stuff. It's almost like a people watching thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Speaking of
didn't
people
mind
watching.
taking pictures in the first one, but it always felt weird to me that it was like Peter's lived in New York City his whole life, and he's like, no, I'm gonna take a picture of the Empire State Building. Like, he's definitely seen it. But if it's like I love that. Also, it's not just repeats from the other photo ops too.
I mean, I don't know that, but at least the ones that I saw were like new.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was a stealth mission with Miles. You can read my full preview on Game Informer to learn a bit more about that. But that's sort of like one of the like different sort of like puzzle sequences, right? Like they change it up every now and then of like, hey, you got a little spider bot, you got to go infiltrate this lab. Or we saw before with Peter in the particle accelerator of like, let's do like an interesting wall crawling thing. There's a like if you remember the lab missions from the first game that were sort of the puzzle things, like there's a new version of that I did with Harry that was like enjoyable. Like there were like small little things where you're just like, oh, that was neat.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just sort of like breaks from the action. And we can see that our old buddy Kurt Connors here giving us some trouble. This is after the big chase sequence that they showed in that big demo with Peter and Miles. This is pretty much the aftermath of that, where you're chasing the lizard down into the sewer and you get into the big fight with him. So one of the big combat additions is the parry move, which we just saw there. So Peter and Miles can parry attacks now. And you can parry any attack, but there's certain big attacks that you saw there where the enemy will kind of glow yellow.
Yeah.
And that kind of lets you know, like, hey, if you parry this kind of attack, they'll really be like on the ropes for a bit and you can get in there. And you just have to time it to where like right before they hit, they'll turn red. And that's the signal to like, okay, parry right now. But you can't parry everything. Like there's blue attacks that the lizard has here where they're like, hey, you gotta move if you see this. And it took some getting used to, because I feel like this game's pretty much train you to hit the dodge button like nonstop,
constantly,
just in case like you're just spamming it. But I interviewed the senior programmer at Insomniac, and he mentioned that they added the parry because they wanted to stop players from spamming the dodge all the time. They wanted combat to feel a little more intimate, a little more strategic. And it definitely does. Like I think this fight is a good example of that, where it feels a little bit more like a dance in terms of reading their movements and trying to like find openings as opposed to just dodging and then getting a hit there and then dodging, you know? Like you kind of have to put yourself in the line of fire to really get in some damage. And the parry feels pretty good. I mean, I'm a sucker for parry mechanics as a Souls fan. But what's also cool about this fight is that I was tinkering around with the different options, whether it be like my symbiote abilities or my iron spider legs, or even stuff in the environment. Or even you saw there when you can shoot your webs at him, it'll like web up his mouth and it'll kind of like pause him for a bit. It's like, oh, there's all these different options for taking the lizard down. And the game doesn't necessarily tell you. It kind of encourages you to like mess around with what you have. And you might find something that might be effective against the enemy, you know? So this is the chase sequence that happens right after you beat the lizard, which was a lot of fun. You kind of going around dodging. This is kind of like the first like super big test of like your traversal of like wingsuiting and sliding or swinging, I should say, or gliding to sort of keep up with the lizard.
Yeah.
Because you're also getting shot at too. It's a whole thing. It's chaos, as you can see, but it's fun chaos. Yeah, do you guys have any specific questions about what you've seen or about Spider-Man?
I mean, I've just been in awe of the animations.
I can
I'm just,
tell.
this whole video, I've just been thinking about those poor animators over at Insomniac and how many different variations they have to come up with.
Yeah, they were showing one of those suits had like wings in a different spot, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Charles, you're a huge fan of the first two games. Are there any things that you're seeing in this footage that are one new to you, or two you have questions about?
Well, yeah, I mean, I read Marcus's fantastic online preview, so I was familiar with most of the stuff here, but I hadn't seen it. One of the things I really liked in Miles's game is the addition of they're called Venom powers, but they're like not the symbiote powers, just the electricity. And just how easy it was to press the bumper and then use an attack. So I wanted to ask about, you said you have there was Iron Spider abilities and the symbiote abilities that Peter has. How much of that did you have like in the preview? Like how you said you could map it to different buttons, is that right?
Yeah, like on that right, on the bar on the left side of the screen, you can equip each one to a face button. So you'll unlock more than 4, and you can kind of swap them out as you see fit. And for when you're playing as Miles, that section is where all his Venom abilities are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just wanted to, so you had 4 Iron Spider ones and you had 4 symbiote ones.
I actually had more. Like the upgrade menu was available to me, and so I was able to upgrade and unlock a couple of new stuff. So they started me with 4, at least for the, like I said, those special abilities. But I unlocked at least 1 or 2 more for Peter and Miles.
Yeah, that's probably my most exciting thing of just messing around with new combat stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's on top of the web gadgets. Like, I only had 2 web gadgets throughout the demo, but there were 2 new ones, and those were fun too. Like, one of them was this thing that shoots like a circular blast of web lines that just like, it's kind of like a black hole effect if it was webbing, where like it attaches to everyone around them and then brings them all to the center where they slam into each other. And then you can just sort of like beat them all up at once. And there was another one that was kind of like a missile drone thing. But yeah, both of those are new, and again, those were fun to sort of incorporate with everything else that you have at your disposal. But yeah, I'm excited to see what other like web abilities they have in the game. Combat is just, I can't stress enough how much fun the combat is in this game. And those games have always had fun combat, but between the new additions and also just getting to switch between Peter and Miles and get like their own sort of like flavor of combat, it was a blast.
Awesome. Well, this game is out in October. Not much longer of a wait. I hope that
October 20th.
October 20th. I hope all of the Spider-Man fans in our audience are happy to see some content about the game. I know they've been very vocal about seeing more of this game on our channel. So,
you think they said, "Get me more photos of Spider-Man"?
Wow. Actually, they said, "Give me more B-roll for editorial uses only of Spider-Man."
Right. JJ's famous line, yeah.
Yeah, that's what we got. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to click the subscribe button, like the video if you want to help us out, and follow these lads on social media. If you have any questions about Spider-Man 2, you can reach out to Marcus at MarcusStewart7. Follow Charles at ChuckDuck365, and you can follow me at It'sFanAkin. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.